You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason, The Interviews, the name that's taken from the Michael Parkinson series, not of a similar ilk, but this time it's me, because I'm Tom Mason, not Michael Parkinson. That would be really odd. But today, we're here doing something that, as if you watch the Tom Mason verse, you know that I have a passion about because I've made a video about it over on the third channel, The Weird. So you know this is in my very small wheelhouse. If it was a giant wheelhouse, then it'll just be a wheel, not the house. But we digressed. My guest today, best known as playing one of the greatest soap villains on daytime, is the one and only Alex Avery.
Hello.
So we shall
That was
start.
my villain. Hello.
Uh, yeah. We shall start at the very beginning because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and in the years I've been doing this, she's not been wrong. How did you get into the wonderful world I call acting?
Uh, I call it acting as well. People who watch me don't necessarily call it acting, but I think it is. That's a good question. Good place to start. I don't know. It's a long and varied journey. There were moments when I was very young that I was interested. But I suppose that the moment that you're looking for was I was at school, and funnily enough, actually, I was celebrating the 60th birthday of a friend who was involved in this process. But I was at school, um, and yeah, I was just keeping myself to myself. And these three people came from a local sixth form, no, not a sixth form college, a local sort of college,
Hmm.
and they were doing, I don't know, production studies or something, and maybe even social studies. And they came to our school to basically introduce us all to improvised comedy, stagecraft, what have you. And I remember it very clearly that there was a circle of us sat down. They were teaching us, and they invited us all to come in, step into the circle, and create something. And I remember thinking, because I was slightly sort of paranoid, I guess, that if everyone laughs at me rather than with me, then I'll just reciprocate and laugh at them, not with them. And so, kind of rather curiously, volunteered myself to be the first guinea pig, stepped into the circle, and performed. And my recollection was that it went quite well. Um, and I think that's probably where I got the first bug, other than watching shows.
Yeah. And one of the things you've appeared in is, I would say, and you probably know this more than me, it links into the circle of shows where they're on long running, but eventually at one point they start becoming this incredible show. They start becoming a show where they help get new people involved into the industry. They like an entry point because they're so beloved. It's
Yeah, yeah.
now the time of let's get a new writer and let's get a new actor in. But what was it like working on an episode of the brilliant The Bill?
Oh God. Well, funny because exactly what the words you just described doctors so well. But the bill was the bill was fantastic. I'm of that age where I was watching it. I was introduced to it as a consumer,
Mm.
and then you graduate from drama school, and it sort of becomes there was this sort of happy families
Yeah,
of opportunities. Really, you'd tick off EastEnders. I mean, depending on where you are geographically, because
yeah.
obviously for EastEnders, read Coronation Street and Emmerdale. So you'd tick off EastEnders, you'd try and do Casualty, you'd try and do The Bill, all this kind of stuff. So they were kind of the leading sort of television, exactly as you say, the leading opportunities for anyone sort of cutting their teeth in the industry. And I remember it very clearly actually because I auditioned for the part of posh kid kick, kicking frozen chicken around a car park, and it was a real, I mean, it was really a non part.
Yeah,
And I went in, and the wonderful Louis Hammond was casting, and I sort of sat down. And you're very polite, you know, it's all new, and so I thought I'm not going to get above myself, but I did think the part was a bit too small for my liking. But hey
yeah,
ho. And Louis said, no, 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 you're not here for that part. And this introduced me to the world of brilliant casting as
yeah.
well. He said, there's a part further down the line that this director is directing. And he's looking at more established names at the moment, and I think that you could be good for it, and I want to put you in the mix. So I went for this kind of posh bloke kicking frozen chicken around the car park, uh, and ended up getting Terry Special Constable Terence Stanley Knowles. Um, and it was, I've been very lucky in my career
Yeah.
across the board, but that was gold. That was, it was such a great part. It's the first time a guest, I believe, I mean, people like yourself who are huge fans of TV and researching the TV, I believe that my character was the first guest
Yeah.
to hold a central storyline.
Mm. And with the bill being this like really popular thing and being so popular that it allows itself to be mimicked on Harry Hill's TV, but which sort of like enhances it showcases that it's an excellent program because it's willing to say, oh yeah, yeah, go ahead, you can take the Mickey out of this, but we are still excellent. Why do you think that the bill was that sort of central club to help people in the industry? Do you think it's because the drama was so good, or do you think that because there was enough room for it to help new people?
Well, I think the size and scale of production. So you're talking about, I can't remember now if it was 2 times a week, maybe it was weekly. I can't remember, but I, there's a great deal of filming going along, and when you're filming things like this, you have what's called units, um, and you'll have maybe 3 units all working on a production at the same time. So generally, you'll have one group filming,
Mm,
and that will possibly dovetail with another group also filming a separate episode, and then you'd have a third group who are in production.
mm,
And so you've got an awful lot of talent, particularly behind the camera, flexing their muscles and doing their stuff at the same time. So editors, directors, producers, casting directors, designers, they're all working
yeah.
constantly. And you need a big team to do that. And so there's an opportunity, just the scale of production, and then the regularity.
Mm,
But of course, the real key with the bill, and when I was working on it, I realized that there's a thing called the Bible, which is what
yeah.
your general rules of engagement are.
Mm,
And very centrally to the bill, a policeman has to be in every scene. So it's
yeah.
constantly told from the perspective of the police force.
Mm,
So the regular cast are very much there and present, but the stories are driven by the episodes, rather, not the stories.
mm,
The episodes are driven by the guests, and you have a huge turnaround of guests, which is why in especially the bill, and it's based in London, of course. So
yeah.
in those days, that was a key factor. You have a lot of actors who are available for a short period of time, a couple
Mm,
of days, sometimes a couple of weeks, of every grade,
yeah.
that you could get Judy Dench one week, and then you get me the next week. I mean, it's and so people and rotation. You know,
Yeah.
you people can come back, but there is always the chance for someone new and fresh to come in and learn, and you're going into an environment where people are very happy to
Yeah.
help you do that.
Yeah, and I think that you can. There's a lot of like Doctor Who is another good example of shows where you can have the same people come back and play different characters because you can do so much with the storylines. But throughout your career, you've done a varied selection of different shows. So, from your opinion, what would you say is the key difference between a soap opera and a traditional drama?
Uh, that's a good question because I mean, it depends really from what angle you're coming from. Because I would say that one difference is a story arc.
Yeah.
So in a drama, you're more likely to have a concise story arc that you can either build upon yourself if
Mm,
it's yours, or you know your value, your contribution to somebody else's.
yeah.
And it's in a drama or in a film, you know, the parameters are an hour and a half. So you've
Mm,
got, let's say, 120 pages, and everything is very fixed within those pages. With
yeah.
a continuing drama or a series, you're sometimes it's not you're not quite sure where you are
Mm,
in the grand scheme of things, and sometimes if you're a guest, you obviously want to invest yourself fully in what you're doing, but it
yeah.
might not be compatible to what one of the leads is doing.
Yeah.
And so you've got this kind of the game where you obviously want to do your job and to the best of your ability, but you've also got to be, in my opinion, respectful for the regulars and the leads,
yeah,
because your plan might not fit into theirs, and so you have to accept that what you want to do with the role
yeah,
might not be compatible with everybody else's plan. That's in a series. In a
yeah,
drama, it's a little bit more obvious. It's a little bit more. You go into the audition, you're very clear what your
yeah.
function is, and then you deliver on that.
Yeah. And one of the things you've worked on in your career that was incredible was when you were working on Doctors. But before you went in entered the world of Doctors, before you were any other role, were you a fan of the soap to begin with, or were you when you first entered, were you going in it with fresh eyes?
The very, very first time so we're going back a few years now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
okay. Um, if I'm honest with you, no. And I think that's weirdly the identity of the show.
yeah,
It's a daytime drama, and so as a daytime drama, it wasn't usually the the sort of television that I would be looking at.
yeah,
So as a consumer, I'll be very honest, no. But as a professional actor, yes, absolutely, very much on the radar. Because if we've spoken about the bill, we've spoken about other continuing dramas. The Doctors is all of that
mm,
amplified on steroids.
yeah,
Doctors was an incredible training ground, incredibly respected for being a training ground. So as a professional actor, absolutely was on my radar, and that would be true for any of the facets for the camera work, the
mm,
design team, editorial team.
yeah.
Yes, very much on my radar.
Yeah, and it was in that list of programs where you hear actors say, "Have you done it?" Like when they say Midsummer Murders, "Have you done a Midsummer's?" It's like one of those things where you hear like there's a list of shows that every actor at some point in their career has to do because it's on the list of treasures. But why do you think Doctors became that type of show where actors just wanted to be there because not just because other people have done it, but because they've heard how fun it is and how enjoyable the sets are.
Well, I think you've answered your own question. I think because people heard how fun it was and how engaging it was. It's quick. You can go in, you can go out.
Yeah,
They treat you well, um, and you learn. It's hard.
yeah,
Certainly the first time you do it, but actually it doesn't get any easier. It's very hard, and I think in a way there's a kind of almost a masochistic slash sadistic element to it.
yeah,
But it goes back to what I was saying before. There are the five. It's because you want to keep working,
yeah,
and you know that if you go into casualty, if you go into EastEnders, if you go into doctors, if you go into the bill, there's a rotation that you could
yeah,
even go back into them. So
mm,
it's not a sort of a badge of honor, I suppose, to do one of those five,
yeah,
but they're all very accessible opportunities on their TV, and they're more accessible than, say, for example, the Royal Shakespeare Company, the
yeah,
RSC, which
yeah,
is you've got to really sort of bang your head against the door, keep banging. If you're lucky enough to even be on their radar to audition,
mm,
a lot of actors don't even ever get the opportunity to audition.
yeah,
So the turnover for the TV things, I think it's a combination of accessibility.
yeah,
You know there's a chance that you're going to get the role,
mm,
and also you know that it's going to be a valuable experience.
yeah. And when you entered into the world of Doctors for that final hurdle, were you looking at it in a different way than you had done before because you're playing a more prominent character, or were you going in it with the same process as you went in it previously?
Totally different. Totally different. And again, this goes back to your question about the expectations. That's why I asked if you're talking about like the first time I ever did
Yeah,
Doctors or this time. No, this time the excitement was huge,
yeah,
huge, huge, huge. It was partly nostalgic. It was partly because at that stage
yeah,
the announcement had been made, certainly within the industry, but I'm pretty sure nationally, the
mm,
announcement of it closing had been made. And I'm going to be very honest here. I was doing another job
mm,
on the Tuesday it was announced.
mm,
And we were no Wednesday. That's right.
yeah,
It was announced on a Wednesday, and I was doing another job with another group of actors who had
yeah,
all been in Doctors at some point. We were all lamenting it. The director, no, the director hadn't been on it, but he wanted to be because
yeah,
it was an opportunity for him. So it had a wide effect on the industry. And so we were all talking about it. And was stood there thinking, well, if I'm being brutally honest, I've done it 5 times.
yeah,
I'm not sure I would want to do it a sixth time.
yeah,
And I'm not sure there's time to because they're cancelling it. But my sadness at that time was the opportunities lost to, as we mentioned before, to young graduates, to young people coming out. It was, yeah, it was a seismic shock, and we saw what was coming. It was
yeah,
terribly, terribly sad. Cut to the next Tuesday, and I got a phone call from my agent, and it's the first time it's ever happened in my career.
mm,
It was a straight offer.
yeah,
No, no meetings, no script,
mm,
absolutely no information whatsoever. Do you want to do 30 episodes on doctors? And at that point, two things went through my mind. One, yes, because
yeah,
it's the last time. And two, 30 episodes means, going back to one of your questions earlier on, I get a story arc.
yeah,
So I can invest in a character. And so I was hugely excited. And of course, because of the world I was stepping into,
mm,
with regard to it coming to an end and all of that,
oh,
that had a huge impact on how I addressed the character, but
yeah.
particularly how I, as a professional actor, how I stepped into what was a really potentially very, very tricky situation.
Yeah. And you can see that when you look at how Doctors came to an end and how on the day of broadcast they had a documentary afterwards, you can sort of then see the parallels now with what Scotland's going through with River City. Why do you think that those shows that are very important to not just the whole industry, but the industry in that particular area, why do you think that it's such a loss for not just the viewers, but to everyone involved in the creative industry?
I'm glad you put that little tag on the end because why it happened, I've no idea. It I guess I have rough ideas, but whether I agree with them or not, I'm not sure. But the effect on the area is huge. It, well, because of what we've mentioned before, and particularly the roles of behind the scenes. There's a Doctors is very, very, very much Birmingham.
Yeah.
River City would have been. I'm not actually sure where it's actually filmed. Is it Glasgow?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it was. So it would be have a huge impact just on the sort of the micro economics of the area of the people. Now, Doctors is slightly different because, of course, you've got Sister Boniface, you've got Father Brown,
Yeah,
and so those studios. So if you look at the credits on Father Brown, particularly, I mean,
yeah,
certainly since leaving, there are WhatsApp threads,
yeah,
and you follow people on Instagram and everything,
mm,
and you see a lot of those people. I'm very pleased to
yeah,
say are continuing their work as researchers, as
yeah,
first ADs, second ADs on Father Brown.
yeah,
But at the time, yeah, I think that the best way of describing it really was when I was working on it, bearing in mind that one of the exec producers, one of the senior writing
mm,
consultants, and all this kind of, they had all been runners at
yeah,
some point. Now I don't know your viewers. The runner is there's someone who comes in for the experience. You're running around doing small errands for
yeah,
all sorts of departments, and it's a wonderful way of working out what each department does.
mm,
So you started in as a runner, and a couple of the exec producers, script editors, all these kind of people started at that point.
mm,
I was having lunch one day on a table on my own, um, and I was looking around, and I saw the table of all of the third ADs, the runners, the production assistants,
mm,
and I got really sad. That was a really horrible moment when I just looked at. I was basically looking at a table of 12 potential script editors, 12 potential BBC exec producers in the making, and this golden opportunity for them. I mean, Doctors is incredible. You go in as a production assistant, you go in as a runner, but I'm telling you, you can go around all the departments either because that's where you're sent or because you develop an interest and you put a request in. They are such a family. And at that point, I thought so many opportunities are being lost, and that was really sad. And that is local.
mm,
They can't afford to bring people in from around the world, around the country, and put them up in hotels.
yeah,
So the crew is very, very local, and it's a huge part of the community. And even a lot of the supporting actors, there are some threads on that. It's a very, very well loved show, from within as well as obviously the viewers.
Yeah. And with Mock the Week returning after 4 years of being cancelled by the BBC on TLC, do you think you can see a future for Doctors? People love it so much, you think that that could return in a few years in a similar fashion?
Honestly, Tom, no. But as we've mentioned, there's Sister Boniface, there's Father Brown.
Yeah,
I think actually Sister Boniface might have been pulled as well, but Father Brown's there, and I think there's a place for a lot of the crew to go, but I don't think no, I don't think they will bring doctors back. In fact, I'm almost certain of it.
mm,
But whether they bring a spin-off show, I mean, for example, there was a great TV show called The Coroner,
yeah,
um, which only had 2 seasons, which was a huge loss. I mean, that was a really, really good show to be part of, and that was sort of like I don't know, it was like sort of doctors. I always used to refer to it as doctors on tour.
yeah,
You're all
yeah,
down in Devon having a good time, but the cast, well, the crew, were all kind of doctors based,
yeah,
and so I think there's an opportunity for there's a lot of talent out there who could
mm,
pull together and do another series.
yeah,
But I think it goes back to why Doctors was pulled and what everybody has planned for Birmingham, particularly.
yeah,
The way where you film Doctors is actually the university campus.
yeah,
So you've got what's the university's plan for that part of the campus, and what's the wider Birmingham plan for the BBC.
yeah. And do you think that it's do you think that it is really important to have those regions represented not just in their own local area but on the mainstream? Why do you think that those type of things are more important now than they've ever been before?
But I think decentralizing is good, and we've seen the success of it. Cardiff, for example, is the
Yeah,
home of, and that used to be Bristol. That was a great shame when Casualty moved from Bristol to Cardiff. But
yeah,
you've now got Doctor Who, Casualty, all based in Cardiff, which is fantastic for
yeah,
that area. My very limited, I'm only an actor. My very limited understanding is that some of the reasons for the Doctor's loss was to spread some of the Birmingham work
yeah,
wider afield to even Newcastle and places which the football club. I think there's a big deal to develop an area in Newcastle
yeah,
as part of that deal for film production,
mm,
and so I think it's generally spread. And I think decentralizing from London is a great thing. As an actor, selfishly, it's less good because you need to sort of spread yourself a bit thinner, but um, it's great. The number of, again, we go back to the nurturing of talent.
mm,
It's great. If you're cast and if your crew, I imagine cost of living is lower
yeah,
in a lot of these areas. So that brings a lot more people into the industry who might not have been able to afford to do that if it had been in London. You got to
yeah,
come all the way down from wherever you're based. Then you've got to find somewhere to stay. So I think creatively, it's amazing. And I think also it goes hand in hand a little bit with, here I am with my RP accent.
yeah,
And that was, I think, very limiting for many, many, many years. Everyone on TV sort of sounded the same. And I think another byproduct of this is the regionality of performance
mm,
and the regionality of storytelling. So I think it's fantastic. And you get these nice little sort of tie-ins, don't you? I'm not sure where the Doctors had a sort of a sister production, but there was the other day, wasn't there, when was it Emmerdale and Coronation Street
yeah,
finally
yeah. They
kind of
merged.
combined, and it's great because that's true of East, well, certainly Holby City and Casualty,
Yeah,
but also I think EastEnders kind of made a reference, did they, that Holby City, Holby General is roughly in their vicinity. I might have made that up, but my point is that the regions can then start to sort of get a bit playful and sort of start to
yeah,
integrate their
yeah.
own identity.
Yeah, I think that the one you referenced into with this, and I I don't I might be wrong on this though, but I think it was Doctors. I think they referenced Doctors. I think it must have been Doctors because I saw someone who I think only ever talked about Doctors. I think they referenced the
Lethbridge.
yeah, yeah. I think they mentioned the main hospital. the bigger
Have I
building.
done it again? Is it Leatherbridge or Lethbridge?
It's Leatherbridge.
Lethbridge, isn't it? Yeah, because
Yeah,
the first day of filming, I think I did Leatherbridge.
yeah,
And I said, oh, well, how can you pronounce that wrong?
yeah,
Yes, I think you're right. I think maybe it was EastEnders. There was a gentle reference.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
there was a sign on the on one of the things that you have to, but you blink and you miss, but you have to pause it and go,
yeah, which
oh,
is
God.
bizarre because, of course, EastEnders by definition is the East End.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and we all know that Lethbridge is up in Birmingham. But
yeah,
yeah, I know.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned crossovers, and I think it wasn't. I don't know if it was on TV, but I've seen this. One of the greatest crossovers, I think, in the history of like soap and drama crossover was when Casualty, because they filmed very close to Pomley Club, they did a crossover very briefly, where even though that the woman that plays Jan Jennings, Di Butcher, is Welsh, it was Robin who wasn't Welsh who was speaking Welsh to the other people in the pub.
So, what was the crossover
So
casualty with?
it's actually a Pomley Cum, which is
Oh,
the
oh yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
the Welsh language math. It's
yeah.
their main one, and they have their famous pub, and obviously at the end of most Casualty episodes, someone is getting hammered in a pub. So they've all
Yeah,
managed to walk from Bristol to Wales in a matter of minutes, and that's the whole joke of it. So the joke is that they've ended up in a Welsh language pub
yeah.
and they don't know how they've got there so quickly, all still
Well,
wearing the
quick,
uniforms.
quickly fine because of course, Cardiff and Bristol are actually not as far away from each other as people
Yeah,
think they might be.
yeah,
The obvious one I thought you were going to lead into was Holby City and Casualty because of course
yeah,
they're the same hotel, same
yeah,
hotel, they're the same, they're the same hospital,
yeah,
and that was the premise right at the
yeah,
very beginning. A very good friend of mine, Joe Kirkland, she played the character who was I think comatose for most of it, but anyway, she was wheeled into Casualty,
yeah,
and then she was diagnosed and treated in the first ever episodes of Holby City,
yeah,
and that always made me laugh because, of course, in the real world,
yeah,
you go into Casualty if you go into the ground floor of A&E,
yeah.
but to get to cardiology, you have to get into a lift. And of course, you'd basically go into A&E in Cardiff and you'd come
Yeah.
out the lift in North London.
Yeah, and I researched it one because I was watching Classic Home Business and I researched how they end up in different pubs and how they don't merge together because they didn't film towards I think it was like towards the end or something. They didn't film in the same areas, so they were all like spread out, and it made it more interesting because you like. Well, some characters went from Casualty to Holby City and vice versa, and you're like, well, how can they never mix in the same pub? It's because they've got their own pub in the back door, in their own door, their own entrance. The Hobby lot got their own pub and they could get
Yeah,
drunk elsewhere.
I think that's probably true of hospitals in general, though.
Yeah,
You probably do stick to your department. I mean, the character, I've forgotten the name, but the actor Vince Pellegrino was
yeah,
Vince Pellegrini. He was the connection.
yeah,
He was the if you like the mastermind of the amalgamation to from Casualty to Holby.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I can't remember what they did. I think there's a little bit of crossover now with characters, isn't there?
yeah. There is.
Um, but but you're right about the pubs. But I suppose that's true. I think that if you're in cardiology, you probably have your cardiology friends, and
Yeah,
if you're A&E, you should let off steam with your A&E friends, and never the twain shall meet. I think that's probably believable. I think it's nice that they maintain this kind of conceit that is it Jax?
yeah,
When I did Casualty, I'm pretty. Oh, that's right. No, she because she's Holby City, wasn't she?
yeah,
Yes. So I did an episode. I finally got to do Casualty,
yeah,
having done loads of Holby, and Jax was there, and that
yeah,
was a crossover. Yeah.
yeah. And they called EastEnders, no, they called Coronation Street and Emerald Corriedale, and all they had to do for Casualty, just call it. It was, I think it was called like Holby Casualty City, which it doesn't really work as well,
No.
because it's like it's in the same building, so it's like it makes no sense to try and merge the titles together. But I do think it's even weirder when then you try and interlock when you try and put Holby Blue into the middle of it. Like you're not gonna get a good title on like Corriedale, which is quite a good title because it rolls off the tongue and it makes perfect sense. And
Well,
you,
of course, and Holby is the name of the hospital,
yeah,
so you know
yeah,
it's not casualty and cardiology. It is you know they named it the hospital, so I think the only one that you can get is just calling it maybe General Holby
yeah,
as opposed to
yeah.
Holby General. Yeah.
And one of the other things you've done that it's it's like I don't know, it's in a list of juggernauts, but if you really look at it now, as in 2020, well, would have been 2025, but we're now
Yeah.
in the future, so 2026.
And I'm so
It
sorry I took so long to do this,
uh,
Tom. This is
there's a
blame
there's
me.
a there's a merge connection with I like when you watch Taskmaster, you have your Taskmaster alumni when you see him on other shows. So you have Doctor alumni is when I'm going to use it, and there's a brief connection, even if it's a span of like probably like 20 odd years, the difference. But what was it like making a cameo in the amazing film Bridget Jones's Diary?
Uh, well, that that was an experience, shall we say? I never actually made it to the edit. So you will be watching Bridget Jones for an awfully long time with an awfully big microscope, and you'd still not catch me. It was a long. It was a terrific. That's probably sort of the most commercial film I've been
Yeah,
involved with, and even in its kind of um, haphazard way, because as I say, it didn't actually end up working out
yeah,
particularly well. Actually, I'd tell lies. I was casting that without auditioning. Fun enough. But you realise, going back to one of your earlier questions, you realise that in a film you're a very very small piece of a jigsaw,
yeah,
and they've got to make editorial decisions, and some of those editorial decisions are on a factor of
yeah,
logistics and timings. Some of it is character driven. Some of it is because they suddenly realise what a terrible actor you are, and they don't want you within um, a mile radius of
yeah,
the set. Um, but the experience was fun. The
yeah,
experience, the read through, the table read through was one of my highlights of my career.
yeah,
So just to be part of that was fun. But
yeah.
no, don't look closely.
Yeah. And when did you hear horror stories of actors finding out they were cut from the film when they're in the screening watching the film? Were you alerted beforehand that you weren't that your scene wasn't going to make it in, or did you find out like some other actors when you were sat in the cinema watching the film?
It was a small part, um, and that hence I was cast by the wonderful Michelle Guiche. Sadly, no longer with us. Great loss to the industry. And she was a terrific casting director. And I think that they threw opportunities that she recognised were, shall we say, disposable. Yeah, but I think she knew that some of these things might not have make the whole
Yeah,
distance. And so I think she was very clever that she cast people who were not only appropriate for the role but also understanding. So I went into that one, and I think we were going to film the scene.
yeah,
Um, I was surprised when we didn't even get that far. You know, we were held on set for days and days. So I was surprised by that, but the whole experience was fantastic, and I
yeah,
wasn't disappointed. The part itself was, it would have been fun sort of selling some drugs to Hugh Grant, but at the end of the day, never happened.
yeah,
But I had done a film previously called Quills,
yeah,
which was actually the first film I ever did, first feature film I ever did. And I remember talking to the writer on that, the lovely Doug Wright, who recently got back in touch with actually. Um, and he told me a story of someone who had turned up to the screening of
yeah,
a film he had done, and he was walking up the steps with his wife or girlfriend and his mum. And as he got to the top of the steps, the director greeted him and said, "Look, I'm so sorry, whoever you are." Um, that's not what he said. He called him
yeah,
his name. I'm so sorry, name of actor.
yeah,
Here are your scenes on a DVD, which is a very sweet thing
yeah,
for him to do because you can use it in your show reel.
yeah,
But it must have been quite a sort of gut wrench for the guy turning up on the red carpet only to be told that he's not in the film. And and it was a great story to be told because it adjusts your
yeah,
expectations. And I think in the film world that's important. As it happens in Quills, Doug came up to me at the the screening
yeah.
with a huge smile on his face. Says, "You're the only character who has survived in their entirety." So it went from the sublime to the ridiculous, or
Yeah.
ridiculous to sublime, I suppose. So going back to the Bridget Jones, it's on my CV because I was
Yeah,
cast, and I think people need to know. We have a nice conversation like this, and
yeah,
you get experiences. But I was cast, and so as an actor, to a point, I did my job.
yeah,
I proved my castability.
yeah,
But as a job, yes, you manage your expectations.
yeah,
So I wasn't edited out of the film.
yeah,
There was nothing for me to take personally
yeah,
because we literally didn't film the scene. It was purely time constraints. They purely didn't have time to put that scene in,
yeah,
and they actually, you watch the film. It's a great film, and I watch it and I think, where the hell would that scene have gone anyway? So
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it was literally, it was a gag.
yeah,
A gag, a vehicle for a joke at Hugh Grant's expense.
yeah.
And Hugh Grant's quite a good actor,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he
Only
just
just.
only just, and he created other opportunities,
Yeah.
and so he fulfilled the role. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it wasn't a huge disappointment. It's a fun story. It's
Yeah.
nice to talk to you about it.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those where you got to experience the set and you got to learn some of this world more and you got to just sit there and observe. And I think that's another key thing that some actors should take on board more is that even if you might not make it to the final edit, you've had that experience and you can take what you've learned from that
Well,
and what you've watched and see where it goes next.
it's funny you should say that, actually, because one of the big things I learned on that was how a third AD, third
Yeah.
assistant director, should not treat other people. And it was a big lesson because
Mm.
we were sort of possibly filming, possibly not filming. And we sort
Yeah.
of, as there is a pool of about three of us as featured artists.
Yeah.
And we were kind of corralled into this area, and we just sat down. We were nice, polite people,
Yeah.
so we just sat down and did what we were told. But it suddenly became clear that we were in with the supporting artists, and one of the assistant directors came in and was just rude.
Mm.
And I sort of said, I think we might be in the wrong room. And she basically sort of said, sit down and shut up. And I looked at her and I said, okay, I suggest you look at your call sheet and you work out, who you're talking to, sort of thing. And it was, I'm cutting a long story short. I wasn't that kind of arrogant about it,
Yeah.
but I made a point.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what we were saying about doctors, which is the scale of the production is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's free, courtesy is free,
Yeah.
and it makes a much healthier, nicer work environment.
Mm.
And I just felt that third AD could do with a good 2 week stint in doctors
Yeah.
to learn how other people operate, how the other world lives.
Yeah.
And that was a big lesson to learn. And you're absolutely right. I mean, an actor's job is to learn how to integrate into a production as much as
Mm.
it is to deliver a performance.
Yeah. And one of the other things you've done that I think is it's it's interesting because it's not like any other form of medium that you because you're doing something of a difference due to the fact that you're not only just playing a role, you're also trying to navigate the medium that the product is centered in. And what's it like doing voice acting for video games, and how is your process different to when you're doing regular acting?
It's a good question. It's great fun. I would love to do more of it. It's good. It's kind of a collective sort of teamwork.
Yeah,
And you go in and you have a lot of opportunities to do things a lot of different
yeah,
ways. It's high energy. um, I've never done a motion capture, which I think is would be an experience I'd
yeah.
like to give a go, because that really blends the two.
Mm.
But in terms of voice, it's fantastic, and you have a lot of freedom, because I think when people see your face and your demeanor,
Yeah,
even subconsciously, you can make sort of certain decisions about that person.
yeah,
But when you're doing voice, I remember actually a better example of it than this, but accents, for example, you can get away with accents a bit more and what have you. But a friend of mine did radio, which
yeah,
was different, but it's a similar process of voice. And she loved it because, even into her 30s, she was able to play 17, 18-year-olds because
yeah,
her voice was, and I think that's what's fun about games. You can just be these incredible monsters. You can be an older wizard,
Yeah.
you can be a
Yeah.
younger swordsman, you can be the hero, just by manipulation of your voice. And so it's actually, yeah, as an actor, it's a great opportunity. It's really, really good fun.
Yeah, and if you're playing one of those, I don't know what the technical term is anymore, but one of the, I think it must be an NPC. That might not be the correct term, but that might be a term. But when you're playing one of those type characters where you technically you're one of the key elements that needs,
Yeah,
when you're doing those type of roles, do you have to like say, do you spend a whole day doing different lines because there is different options to
yeah,
take the story?
yeah. So NPC, yes, non-playing character, isn't it? Um, yes, exactly. A good example of that would be Battlefront, for
Mm,
example. So that was the second Star Wars film. Nice to be able to talk about it because a lot of these times you go into these jobs and you have no idea what you're filming for or
yeah,
recording for because there's so many, NDAs, so disclosure forms and legalities. And I remember that one was called Walrus for
yeah.
some reason. But it didn't take long for me
Yeah,
to realize what it was. But and as a little side, the reason it didn't take long is my wife was in the first Battlefront playing a
yeah,
stormtrooper, and as I went into the studio, I saw this massive poster on the wall saying Battlefront, and I looked at the director and I said, "Oh, that's it. You know, that's my wife," because it was of stormtroopers,
yeah,
and my wife famously is the first ever female stormtrooper.
yeah.
That's of any
Wow.
format, video, film, whatever you like,
Yeah,
because she spoke. So she's the first ever female stormtrooper. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you're about to join her." And I realized at that point it was Battlefront 2.
yeah,
And we were recording, we are having a sort of a good laugh. And during the recording, I said, "I've got three children, well, two children probably at that time."
yeah.
I said, "Could I bring them in and we could be the first ever stormtrooper family?" And it crossed his mind. He said,
Yeah,
"That'd be great." But he then sort of pushed it up the channels, and
yeah,
sadly it came back negative. But I thought that'd be really good fun to be the stormtrooper
yeah,
family. I've now completely forgotten what you asked me.
yeah. And it's when you hear about it. I'm glad that the video game industry has a BAFTAs like everything else because it deserves the same recognition. And do you think that that showcases that the video game industry isn't just people going pew 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 pew, I'm a robot on a controller?
Oh, this is huge. It goes back to what you're saying about NPC, and I've just remembered the question you asked
Yeah,
me, which is yes, as a stormtrooper, you run through a whole load of lines and options
yeah,
of which grenade you're going to fire and which gun you're going to take out.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean the gaming industry is huge.
yeah.
They spend more money now on launching a video game than they
Mm.
do a film.
Wow.
The oh yeah no the games are where it is at,
Yeah,
Tom. I mean that's the huge thing, and I think partly going back to what you're saying about the NPC. So you might be an NPC, you might be a
yeah,
stormtrooper just chucking a grenade, saying fire in the hole, fire in the hole,
yeah,
or you could be a serious character
yeah,
development. And I'm a big Assassin's Creed player, for example,
mm,
and you'll complete a mission, and then you go into a big castle, and you
yeah,
start talking to all the people about the narrative, but you don't play that character, or no
yeah,
one plays that character. They are just involved in the storyline,
yeah.
and so all of these games, a lot of these games. I mean, The Last of Us
Great.
is a great example because and Tomb Raider, I suppose, to a point that they've realised these storylines are so strong and so
Yeah,
popular that they've developed them into the medium of film.
yeah,
But the reality is they exist in computer games, and so when you're playing a computer game, you are sort of watching a film
yeah,
for 40 hours, or in my
yeah,
case, 400 hours, because I'm so slow and I can't commit to it. But you could watch a whole film for
yeah,
40 hours. So the mediums are very, very compatible,
mm,
and the performances,
yeah,
are incredibly gratifying and rewarding because you get to play these fantastic characters that you may well not otherwise get to play um, without a lot of prosthetic
yeah,
makeup
yeah.
on screen.
Yeah, and you said that it's like watching a film, and you sort of see that when you look on YouTube and you have those big games that got these like intertwined. So there is people out there that have cut out all the gameplay and just merged all the cutscenes together, and
Yeah,
it does prove the point from what you say. It does prove the point that it's on another level because you can play like I don't know, a Call of Duty game and you can get really invested in this story and forget that you have to then run around and then shoot Jeffrey over there, but you just like started crying because Jeffrey wants to marry another woman or whatever, and you
Yeah.
get this like interest in. Do you think that that also enhances the playing like style because you're not just going pew 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 die die die. You're going, wow, this is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, of course, because you're invested in what happens next. And this is that I was talking to someone the other day about the addiction levels of games.
Yeah,
And they're driven by this sense of worth and value,
yeah,
by the sense of you can be better, um, and as well as the game itself being
yeah,
addictive, but also there's the storyline. You know you want to know what happens next,
mm,
and then you might even get bored of a certain section
yeah,
and you want to move on. So you need the narrative to help you drive forward, and then you make these decisions. I mean, Assassin's Creed, you do a side story,
yeah,
or do you want to know what happens next in the main story? So it's all of these levels just add to our commitment and the addiction to the game. And yeah, but you say you put these things together. I discovered that quite on one level because you go onto YouTube and I can then edit out my character. So if I want to know what happened to my character on
yeah,
the game that I didn't play, you can go onto YouTube. You can say, oh, I did make it. That's lovely.
yeah,
Nice little tick. But also, if I needed it for a game reel,
yeah,
you can edit it off and someone else has done the work for you. Thanks very much.
yeah, yeah. And we mention it a lot here, but there was an episode last year of Doctor Who called Story in the Engine, which was all about the fact that everyone's got a story to tell, and it's important, and it showcases that no matter who you are, there is always something to say. There's always a story that it might be a very bland story, but it's still everyone's got a story to tell. Why do you think that storytelling is so important? Mainly now more than it's ever been in the history of storytelling.
Well, that's a leading question, Tom. um, wow. Storytelling is a huge thing. I've got one very obvious example of it, but I
Mm,
think you contextualizing it to the modern era, which ironically is
yeah,
now full of storytelling to the
yeah,
point of you can't separate fact from fiction.
yeah,
Now, that's a different type of spinning a story, a
yeah,
political story, and fraudulent sort of information
mm,
is that's obviously a big negative, and we don't want that. Thanks very much. But the idea of storytelling, I think it's always been important, hasn't it? I mean, you go back to the Greeks and the Romans and the Odysseys, and it's I was about to say it's a reflection of culture, which I think it is.
yeah,
Of course, it's not necessarily a reflection of historical accuracy.
yeah,
Um, and so you're looking at a period through someone else's lens. I mean, Shakespeare's a very good example of that.
yeah,
Richard III, was he a hunchback? Did he kill the boys in the tower? But
mm,
of course, he's writing for Henry VIII's daughter,
yeah,
and so he has to portray the Yorkist as a villain,
mm,
and therefore you're not necessarily getting a truth. But the point is, it creates an environment where you can think, well, that's an interesting period of history, and so storytelling as a historical piece is interesting because it, as I say, it evokes nostalgia and it evokes these periods that you might want to
yeah,
sort of get into. It's a distraction,
yeah,
and I think for many years it was a way of humans bettering themselves. Of you can discuss a lot of things by example of
mm,
a story. So Aesop's fables, for example, you can create a moral narrative. The Bible,
yeah,
it is as much a moral narrative as it is anything else, as well as building a community. And so storytelling has always been important. And then the example I was going to give, which is when I did Warhorse, the
mm,
stage show of Michael Morpurgo's story, he said something very interesting towards the end of my run, actually, which is in 2014. And he said, the people who survived this are now no longer. It's
yeah,
2014, so even if you're 100 years old, the chances are your memory of the period is minimal.
mm,
And so that I think was the most recent huge historical event that was now passed over to storytellers
Yeah.
rather than lived experience.
Yeah.
And World War II is getting to that point now.
Mm.
So storytelling has always had an important role to play, and will continue to do so. But now we're dealing with different types of storytelling, which of course is not great because you know you've got to sort of separate the fact from fiction in real time. So rather like I was saying about Shakespeare, you've got to separate the fact from fiction, the fact from fiction in hindsight. We're now dealing with it on a 24-hour
Yeah.
basis, and that's quite scary.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Warhorse, and Warhorse, the film is really good, and I'm not saying the film's bad or anything. It's just that when you look at the stage play, and you look at and it's appeared on TV multiple times in bits of Blue Peter, but you look at the way the horse is constructed, not just design wise but performed, having the horse performed so well and so just amazingly. Does that help your performance because you know that you can sense that that horse isn't just a piece of puppetry, which
Yeah,
puppetry in itself is a brilliant art form, but it also feels to you like a real horse because it's performed so excellently.
it's a two-way street, that Tom, because the horse, yes, is clearly in a very distinguishable shape of a horse,
Yeah,
but it is also very clearly a puppet
yeah,
manipulated by three people. So, as I say, it's a two-way street because the horse is giving us a message that I'm a horse, but we also have to give the message back that you
yeah,
are a horse, and therefore the audience always say, "Oh my God, it's amazing how quickly we get used to the horse being a horse." And I'm saying, well, that's because between you and the
mm,
horse, there's another. We were called the monkeys, you know,
yeah,
as it weren't called, we're just kind of things that wave their hands around
yeah, yeah,
because it was a story told from the perspective of the horse.
yeah,
And I said to everyone in the audience that between you and this wonderful puppet
mm,
is another factor that is key, which is me or my colleagues who are interacting with this thing
yeah,
as a real horse. And collectively, that delivers. You're making an offer, which is what they say in rehearsals. We're making an offer to the
yeah,
public. Are you going to come with us on this journey?
mm,
And they do, and it's wonderful. And that's the magic of it. But going back to the film, I love the film because it
yeah,
really bigged up the fact that I must have been a terrific actor on stage to have
yeah,
nailed the part. That in the film they needed two people to perform. So
yeah,
Hiddleston and Cumberbatch came in, and obviously the role was so huge, so
mm,
mighty, too huge, too mighty for either of them to deal with individually.
yeah,
So they had to come in on a joint effort. But that's the part I played on my own every night. I'm being slightly disingenuous actually because
yeah,
there's another character called Captain Stewart who does exist in the play,
yeah,
but in the film they kind of morphed the two together, and Captain Nichols kind of took on a different, slightly different function in the film.
yeah. And I think that when you look at stage puppetry in that sense, not your traditional Muppet type puppetry, with ignoring Avenue Q, which is the one I was trying to reference to.
Yeah,
But when you see the Warhorse type puppetry, does that sort of enhance the experience because it's done in a lot different ways. It's not your that's me doing it.
that's right.
That's not in your traditional sense. It's in a new way. Do you sort of like because focused on your role? Do you sort of see that and go, that's an art form in itself?
Absolutely. I mean, the so famously, the Warhorse production was came out of the idea of Tom Morris, the director, watched a performance by Handspring Puppet Company,
Yeah,
a South African company, and they brought some animals to life in a production which I forget the name of. And he thought I would love them to be able to do that and tell a story in a theatrical environment with you know human characters and what have you, whatever his thought process was. And he didn't know which story to do. And then I think it was his mum introduced him to Warhorse,
yeah,
the book. And so he approached Michael Morpurgo, and going back to your point about these puppet, what are the puppets that we know? He his when Tom suggested a stage show of Warhorse,
mm,
Morpurgo's only point of reference at that point was a pantomime horse.
Yeah.
So, and he just couldn't see it working. So he just said, yeah, whatever, weird bloke, go off and do what you want to do. No one expected those puppets. No one expected the puppets to the point that even in rehearsals,
Yeah.
the wicker puppets were originally a two-man operation.
Yeah.
And then during rehearsal, they realized they needed a third puppeteer on the head.
Mm.
And so it was a completely developing process. And it took a lot of people by surprise. But the handspring guys, Laz and Adrian, are amazing. And they created these incredible um, well, puppets, but so animatronic. They're just these incredible creations.
Yeah.
Um, that, and as Spielberg said when he spoke to, I think it was Michael Morpurgo again, he said, the problem with my horse is it couldn't act. The great thing about the horse on stage and Warhorse is they contribute massively to the
Yeah.
performance. And those puppeteers are so skilled, and for
Yeah.
many of them, it's a new experience. You
Yeah.
spend weeks building up body strength alone, and they were just extraordinary. So yeah, very much part of delivering something that the audience had never seen
Mm.
before, created its own
Yeah.
sort of thing, but also us as actors, as performers, inviting the
Yeah.
audience and saying, are you happy to join us on this journey?
Yeah, and you mentioned there about the horse in the film not being able to act. I do think that there's a lot of horsey based things out there like White Horse, Black Beauty, and all this. I do think that it is hard to work out what's a good horse actor and what's a bad
Mm-hmm.
horse actor because they've all got the same expression. Unless one's actually a mule, not really a horse, then you can tell the difference. But do you think that it if they had use a puppet in the film, do you think that would have made the film a lot different?
No, no, because you don't have that invitation of this is what we're presenting to you. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done,
Yeah,
um, but I can see why Spielberg went for CGI
yeah,
or however the horse was created. It but it could have been done, but it would have been a very
yeah,
different story. I mean, but going back to them acting, I mean, they have horses have personalities, full
yeah,
stop. And so that film would have been different if you'd put a different horse in.
yeah,
We may not have perceived the difference, but on the stage, I mean, you might not go every night, but I used to tell this story to one of the puppeteers who was in one of the cast changes. So I'd been
mm,
in the show for a year, and so
yeah,
and he was in the heart, so he was the breathing,
mm,
forelegs of the horse, and they all go through this kind of physical. They've got to get there, and it's
yeah,
mentally very difficult, and they've got to convince themselves that they will
yeah,
complete this journey, and they sometimes they feel so lost. This is never going to work. And I remember saying to him, I said, if it was possible to blindfold me on stage
mm,
and then do the show, I would be able to tell. So this is in my first year. There are three
yeah,
different teams. I said to him, I would be able to tell you who's in that horse,
yeah,
because each combination of puppeteer, each combination of three, provided their own personality,
yeah,
and of course that makes it different each night for the audience because and the actor. So there's an element of realism every single night that I don't know how that horse is
yeah,
going to behave, or I know how one might behave, and if it behaves differently, it takes me by surprise. And so there's a lot of subtlety, and it basically means that as Captain Nichols, my performance would change
mm,
accordingly,
mm,
and obviously the relationship put upon the audience would change accordingly. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it would work. I think those
mm,
horses were so incredible
yeah,
that I think you well, listen, they filmed the show. They
yeah,
filmed Warhorse on stage, and it worked.
yeah,
So yes, sorry, I'm being absolutely stupid. Yes, they did it. They
yeah,
filmed our performances,
yeah,
and it worked on screen. Those puppets were magical, and it evoked. Again, we were talking about storytelling. It evoked this kind of distant memory that we all had of puppetry, which kind of was a lost form of storytelling for many of us for years and years and years.
yeah,
And Warhorse brought it back, and now we see a lot more puppetry.
yeah,
You could argue that animation is telling the similar story.
Yeah,
We're being convinced and we're being told stories by effectively plasticine puppets.
yeah. And so as we draw a close to this wonderful interview, um, where without giving away your home address, where can people track you down online?
Where can people stalk me? No, please don't stalk me. Um, well, just out of interest, I've got a podcast myself. So if
Mm,
people are interested in wine, they can track me very easily, and it's called Talking of Wine, and it's just an introduction for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about it. They can do that. I'm based in London, um, but as we spoke about before, that's not a necessary requirement anymore. So I'm as likely to be up in the West Yorkshire Playhouse doing Macbeth at Blenheim as I am doing. I was going to say another episode of The Bill, but of course that's not going to happen. I'm very good at killing shows, aren't I, Tom? I killed The Bill, I killed Doctors, slowly working my way through them. Holby doesn't exist anymore, although I wasn't in it at the end, but I christened that one. That's the odd one.
yeah.
I was in the first series of that. But yeah, so I can be filming an episode of EastEnders tomorrow, or I can be up in Pitlochry doing a Shakespeare the next day. Yeah.
And so there we have it, another wonderful interview. And for anyone wondering, yes, we do want to make sure that these shows don't die out. So if anyone can help the petition to keep River City alive, I think the petition's still going. I think the cast is still talking to the government about it. They might have finished by now. They might have just popped off a call with them now. Who knows? And so that was another excellent, wonderful interview. Thank you for letting me interview
Well, thank you for your patience in getting me finally on
you.
board to do it. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. And thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I've forgotten.